great to have you here today. Welcome to the last meeting of March of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I am President Catherine Staub. I've got 1 quarter to go. Hey, Doug! I did give Doug grief when I was greeting visitors and guests. I warned Linda only to pay attention to Kathy and not to Doug. So I guess I deserved that. Anyway, we are delighted that you are here today. Even you, Doug. See, I've got the microphone, so you should never start this. Randy Worth is going to give us a moment of inspiration, followed by the pledge and the 4-way test. You too can sign up for a moment of inspiration, either in the lobby or online. Randy?
Thank you, President Catherine. Welcome to March 31st. It's the last day of March, the month that we celebrate Women's History Month. It's an annual declaration, a month that highlights the contributions of women in history in contemporary society. And it's a reminder to ourselves of your accomplishments and how these accomplishments benefit our culture and society. I find it interesting that even in Proverbs 31, okay, there's a mother that is educating her king's son on the value of a woman. And here's some of the highlights. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household and is not idle. She gives her fruit of her hands and lets her own works praise her. Ladies, I am grateful that society has progressed enough to give you the credit for the fruit of your works. And I want from me, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm speaking for the club, that I'm grateful for what you add to society, to my friendships, to me, and to our club. Thank you very much. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the 4-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And meet and greet.
Good to see you too. It's exciting to see you on the agenda. Fun. You should just join me.
I think you got it. It'll be fun to hear. Yeah.
It'll be awesome. How's your stuff going? Is it going well?
It's going well. Yeah.
Is Eastside moving forward?
It is. Yeah. We have 1.9 million left to raise. So.
Okay.
Well, I'm downhill.
I'm starting mine, so I'll be on the high side of 2024. I think I'm at 6 done right now. So 18 left to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a multi-year endeavor.
Well, and honestly, ours is a little different because we accept the ARPA funds. So I ship out 10 million in the next 6 weeks. Yeah, it's a little different on that front. Yeah.
I'm sure there's all kinds of work that comes along with that.
Actually, the reporting hasn't been too bad yet. I think the hardest one will be this one that we just got from RCDM rental systems and what basically said free for a lot. Thank you. Use the money however it is, the house of money. That comes with a ton of money.
All right.
So that one we're hiring a person to do.
We wish happy birthday to Denise Espin today. I don't think she's joining us, but if you see Denise at some point, wish her a happy birthday. We welcome a number of guests, some on the PowerPoint and a couple I will just announce. If you would please stand when I announce you, we would appreciate it. So Linda is a guest of Kathy Cody. Welcome, Linda. David is a guest of Deanne Thompson. Welcome. See the family resemblance there. Ted Corrigan is a guest of Graham Gillette, and Ted is going to be joining us full time pretty soon, so excited about that. Eric Dickinson is a guest of Paul Kirpus. Welcome, Eric. Todd is a guest he is president of the Ankeny Club, and he brings Dan with him, who's a prospective member of our club. So welcome to both of you. Delighted you could join us. And if you, especially as you look ahead to upcoming programs, if you see a program that you think would be of interest to somebody, please invite them to join us and make sure you input a reservation for yourself and your guest ahead of time. That would be helpful for us. And now Mark Lyons is going to introduce our program for today. Oh, there he is. He was over there. Mark.
Doug told me I got more desserts if I went to another table. Thank you, President. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce Melissa O'Neill as our speaker. Melissa is the CEO at Central Iowa Shelter and Services. Her organization's mission is to provide low-barrier shelter, meals, and support services at no cost to adults experiencing homelessness and to facilitate their move towards self-sufficiency. Melissa is a native Iowan. She grew up in West Branch and early in life developed a passion for basketball. She played basketball at Clarion University in Pennsylvania, and following graduation served as an assistant women's basketball coach at Syracuse. She also has a master's degree from Syracuse. In 2016, she was inducted in the Clarion University Sports Hall of Fame for basketball and track. Melissa approaches every situation with the mindset of a coach, looking to help people win by living healthier lives, gain the skills they need to be independent, and have access to support mechanisms to help them succeed. She's been recognized by the Business Record 40 Under 40. She's married to Jeremy and lives in Indianola with him and their 2 children. So please welcome Melissa.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'll give Kitty a second to bring up a photo here I'm going to share with the group. I have to be honest, Al, every time I look over there, I think Jim Boeheim is sitting in the audience. I don't know why, but then I see Monsignor, and I figure I should start with this joke about how 4 priests walked into a bar last night and ordered a water. Yeah, right? So my daughter works at Sports Page, and it was religious ed last night, and I hear about how Monsignor comes in before confession. And I'm like, I feel like that's like a joke that should be told after Mass on Sunday. Anyways. Well, I see so many familiar faces in the audience, and I just thank you all for welcoming us back here to speaking about CISS. It gives me goosebumps. Every single day I get to work with this amazing team of volunteers and staff who are on the front line of fighting one of the most complex situations and really moral issues that we have in our community. I love seeing Kathy here from Hope. You know, these are our brothers and sisters in Christ over there, and there's so much that we do with one another and for each other through this same struggle. So I wanted to start off by sharing this photo, and it's a little bit of a challenge to see, but what you're looking at here is I have an 11-year-old who believes that he is going to pilot the first aircraft to Mars. And he was in the same situation I was when I was in 5th grade, and I said, I'm going to be a college women's basketball coach, and every decision I made was down that path. And he says, Mom, I'm going to pilot the first aircraft to Mars. I want to be an engineer. And one of the ways for me to go about doing that is I need to become an Eagle Scout. So Todd, thank you for that passion. So he says, Mom, I got to be an Eagle Scout, because if I'm an Eagle Scout, I'm more likely to get into the Air Force Academy. And if I get into the Air Force Academy, they're going to pay my way to learn how to fly. I can become an engineer, and I'm going to pilot the first plane to Mars. So my commitment to him was the same commitment that my parents made to me. And it's when you make it, you got to reach down and help and influence that next generation. So my son got to be that person. So I promised him, I looked literally online at Space Center Houston almost every single day, waiting for them to make the announcement about a space exploration merit badge at the Houston Space Center. I agreed to fly him down to Houston. It was a 36-hour trip. We left at 6 a.m. from Des Moines International Airport. We arrived in Houston, and I'm hoping this kid's gonna sleep on the plane. right? No, his heart was pumping. He got to fly in his first plane. I didn't get a wink of sleep for 36 hours. The flight back, he was wide awake. I'm like, dude, go to bed. It's a red-eye flight, right? He didn't. So this is actually 11:30 at night, camping underneath the SpaceX Falcon in Houston, Texas. And I had one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had with my son. And we're looking at the Space Shuttle Independence, and he had just spent the entire day with NASA scientists talking about food, transportation, and housing. Because if he's going to fly the first plane to Mars, he's got to know about food, transportation, and housing. So here we are talking about something that's going to take him 6 months to fly to, and I'm fighting the same battle in my own backyard. What was so intriguing is the things that they were coming up with as solutions were the same things we could do in our own backyard today. They just required us to get out of our own way and to start thinking creativity about an abundance rather than a scarcity. So I won't make you stare at this photo all day long, but I'll say that that trip has inspired our next generation to figure out how we are going to house the homeless, feed the hungry, provide a drink to the thirsty, visit those who are imprisoned, who are sick, and to bury the dead. And so I see Monsignor, yes, these are the corporal works of mercies. You taught these to my children in Christ the King. And they live them every day, only he's trying to figure out how to do it on Mars. And I'm trying to figure out how to do it in my own backyard. So I'll pause there, because that's a lot to take in. And I'm not sure if any of you have ever had that experience with your children. But we take that same mindset and that same fight and that same tenacity to the front line in our emergency shelter every day. I've been in this role for roughly 5 years, and when I started in the shelter, we had a massive financial deficit. We had over 200 people using our emergency shelter every single night, and we only had 150 beds. At the height of 2017-18, and that bitter cold winter where we had 40 tent campers in our water retention basin, we had over 230 people in our shelter and 40 people camping outside our building. It absolutely broke our heart. And we sat around with our community and our stakeholders and our investors, and we said, enough is enough. We have to do something different. We have to think differently about how we're going to solve this problem. So you fast forward today, and as I left the building, our emergency shelter had 99 people. In the last 15 months, we've had a length of stay of 28 days or less. When I started in our emergency shelter, we had a 75-day length of stay. We'd created a hammock. We're not designed to be a hammock. We were designed to be a safety net. I will give you a fish, we will teach you to fish. We are no longer going to enable a community to do something that they can do for themselves. We started to hurt the same people we were trying to help by doing too much. We had to get out of the way. And so today, we have 81 apartments that are full within our residency and our veterans programming and our supportive housing units, and we're teaching people to fish. Literally. If you've driven by our building, and I know this is part of the reason why I was asked to come in here today, is that we have started 3 separate job training programs within our emergency shelter, all creating a pathway to self-sufficiency for the people that reside in our services and even those who are out on the streets. One of those programs happens to be building a current 3,200 square foot greenhouse. We decided coming out of the pandemic that we had to do a better job of creating a food secure community. Harvard research comes out with a study every 2 years that looks at the number of people who are rent burdened or excessively rent burdened living in West Des Moines and in Des Moines. And 80% of the people in downtown Des Moines are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. Think about that. 80% of the people residing in these housings that you're looking out the window are rent burdened, which means they have to make the difficult decision between housing, food, transportation, health care, and some of those same social supportive services that we take for granted every day. So one of the best ways that we could prevent homelessness is to create a food secure community. So we are in the process of building that 3,200 square foot greenhouse that will produce 12,000 pounds of fish and 200,000 heads of lettuce every single year. That food will go directly into our community kitchen programs. It'll employ individuals within our emergency shelter and our apartments. And the larger 4-acre agri-neighborhood that's being constructed includes walking trails, places for meditation, places to express our story through the arts, and most importantly, everything that's planted will be edible. We most recently planted 47 fruit and nut trees, and yes, I know that'll take 5 to 10 years before I actually harvest the fruit and nut trees, but you know what? The best time to plant a tree is today. So we've planted those trees, and we've gotten a little bit excited about the fact that we had to get out of our own way and say, we can't solve this problem. So we hired a pontoon boat company and a dock company, and we said, if you're going to end food insecurity in our community in a water retention basin, how would you do it? And so they actually made for us a floating raised beds. No different than if you go to a lake house and you walk out on the dock, only this actually floats so that if that water retention basin ever floods, that raised bed just goes up and it comes right back down. So that the food that's being planted in that water retention basin is held harmless from the water. Now, if you've driven by, it's only actually flooded 2 times, I think, in the time that I've been there, but just in case, we'll have the technology that supports it. So fast forward, I get asked this question a lot: how did we survive COVID-19 and the pandemic? And I am so grateful to say that there were people like David Johnson and our army of volunteers from our IT department that said, Melissa, you need a plan. And we started creating this plan with a gentleman by the name of John Notch and with the Polk County Emergency Management Group back in 2016. And so this February of 2020, we decided to implement a plan that was created with partners in the community, thinking it was going to be hepatitis C or tuberculosis. My vice president of operations actually had already gone around and picked up all the masks. So if you couldn't find an N95 mask in 2020, we most likely had it. If you couldn't find a concrete mask to keep the dust out, we had those too. We had most of your painting masks. This woman went around, and I think we had 2,000 to 3,000 masks in our building before we even declared a pandemic in the state of Iowa. So we graciously handed them out to a few of our partners to make sure they were covered. And then we worked with all of our churches that generally make quilts for us, and they had transitioned their operation into making masks for us. And so we were stable throughout the process. It wasn't until this January 2021 that we were finally hit by the COVID-19, and it actually hit our staff. Hit our staff more than it hit our clients, and we relied heavily on our community partners to support that. But the plan was in place well before we even had an issue. So we survived COVID-19, and I think we're more or less flourishing out of COVID-19 with the length of stay that we have in our building today and with the numbers in our building today, that we're able to maintain social distancing. Our staff at one point in time was operating 3 hotels in addition to the emergency shelter. So we were spread out all across the metro. And as I share with a few of our friends, we can't tell anybody about that because we get a lot of the not in my backyard. But the reality is they were in your backyard and you didn't know it. So we did a good job. I'll talk a little bit about this even the last 9 weeks, and then I'll pause for some questions here. So we had some extreme cold in the last 9 weeks. You may have heard some things in the news media about what we were doing to help the unsheltered. And again, we already had these plans in place. We just implemented them again with our friends. We are on the phone with Hope Ministries because they have a weather amnesty policy as well that allow individuals who have been timed out or may have had other behavioral issues to come back in. And so we partnered up with them and we worked together, and we brought in 81 individuals off the street during that time. Most of those individuals either resided with us at Hope or in our hotel. From the 81, all but 6 were stably housed upon exit from those facilities. They did not return to the streets. To give you an idea of what that means in context, from December 29th to February 14th, in our building alone, we had 520 people that we served. We had a 69% positive outcome rate to return to stable housing, and for those individuals who were unsheltered, only 6 of the 81 returned. Everyone else was stably housed afterwards. And that just goes back to, we have to get out of the way. We have to pretend we don't have all the answers. Most people can solve their own problems. We just have to help coach them through it, and they're able to step up and overcome. And when we partner with other organizations that can help move a person through that path of self-sufficiency better than we can. So I'm going to pause, because that's a lot of information, and I could keep talking because you gave me a microwave and you didn't give me a time limit. But I'm happy to answer any questions that the group has. Yeah, go ahead.
I assume that drug and alcohol are a significant problem. How do you handle that? What do you do about it?
Yeah, so drug and alcohol is a significant problem. The number one reason why an individual says they're homeless is usually loss of income or employment, about 44% of our population. Once our team starts to get to know that individual a little bit better, and that usually happens within the first 3 days, we typically find out there's a mental health or substance abuse issue or some sort of co-occurring disorder between the two. What we find, again, when we peel back that onion a little bit further, is somewhere along the line there's been a trauma or somebody's lost their way and lost their purpose in life, right? They've connected their purpose in life to an object or thing rather than to their soul and to their being. And so I use basketball as an example. So when I quit coaching basketball, when I resigned, I remember sitting in the dining room with my husband saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Right? Basketball was everything. Every decision I made had to do with the game. And what I quickly realized, it wasn't the game that I was connected to. The basketball was just a tool for me to go about doing my work. Many times people enter the emergency shelter and they've lost that. And so if we can help them regain it through meaningful engagement, whether it be community service, I don't know if you guys know this, but we actually are won the Volunteer of the Award for the city of Des Moines, because so many of our residents would turn around and volunteer and give back to the same community that was providing a roof over their head and food in their stomach. So we would go and we work with Parks and Rec and work in the greenhouse and go work at Grays Lake to make sure that there was a community that thrived in the parks, giving people purpose. We also do this, we have a whole progressive engagement piece. If you come to our Heroes for Homeless event on April 28th, we're going to be sharing the results of that progressive piece. So much of it, there's something called a makeover moment. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. Women, there are things we will say to our beautician that we won't say to anybody else. Men, there are things you will say to your barber that you won't say to anybody else. The same thing is true with our residents. And so individuals who choose to go through the makeover moment, we actually have Salon Spa W come in from the East Village and Big Mike come in from Drake with an apprenticeship program. They give haircuts. And we've trained the beauticians and the barbers to ask a question. And the question is simple. Is there anybody that you would like to see or have them see you? Would you be interested in a photo? And after they get their hair cut for the first time and they look in the mirror, which is extremely emotional, we take a photo or we put them on FaceTime with a loved one. And they get a chance to see somebody in a way that they hadn't seen them in a long time, which is a transformational moment all by itself. We also, in that period of time, ask them if they'd like to go drive and go see anybody. And the reason why we do that is we hired a peer support specialist, somebody with lived experience in substance abuse, mental health, homelessness, and they will drive them anywhere they want to go. So why? There's things you will say to the front windshield of a car that you will not say to somebody else. And it's in those moments where the peer support specialist is able to engage a person at a completely different level, because the problem's no longer sitting in front of them. The problem's out here, and we're just going to partner together to work on it. And they ask them, do you want to enter recovery? Would you be interested in going to Bethel Mission or going through the Door of Faith program? We're able to transition people into a recovery or substance abuse or sober living just by having those powerful moments. And for us, it started with a haircut. Yeah, if you want to see the photos, we'll be posting them after April 28th. But those, it's absolutely transformational. They get a 1-hour photo shoot. The client gets to pick whatever music they want to listen to, and they put it on, and there's some of them you would think are models. I mean, just gorgeous photos. There's one of them that I want to make a billboard going down Flora Drive that says, I'm a human. His eyes just glow. Yeah.
My question relates more to something that we see occasionally, and I'm just not sure where it fits in the mix here.
Mhm.
If it's with you or somebody else. But occasionally we'll see these encampments.
Mhm.
You know, they're in the woods here, the woods there, whatever. And
Yeah.
you see the remnants of that. Do you have interaction with those? And if
Yep.
so, what is it and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so talking a little bit about encampments, people that have chosen to stay outside, there is a small population of individuals who experience homelessness who just do not want to come inside. That is their chosen lifestyle. I'm going to tell you a kind of a yin and a yang to this, all right, because there's two sides to every story. There's one individual that I know that stays in the camps. In his story, just to put it simply, he used to be a butcher at Fairway. Lived a great life, married, and his wife got cancer. And his wife then passed away of cancer, and he says, I don't want to live anymore. I want to be done. He's given it all up. You'll see him panhandling here in downtown Des Moines, and he actually takes all that money and he gives it to the clients in our emergency shelter. Last week he decided, I don't do pop for lunch, just so you know, pop's not allowed in our building. He bought pop for everybody off of the money you guys gave him panhandling. Because there is a correlation with food and behavior. I don't allow sugary drinks. But he's a gentleman who camps out in our community. He doesn't want to be here. He wants his wife back. Right? So I ask people when you see someone camping to have compassion because you don't know their whole story. And for that gentleman, he leaves his camp somewhat messy so you won't come near it. It's not that he's unclean. He comes in our building for showers. He's one of the best dressed clients I've got. But when it comes to his campground, he leaves it messy and disgusting so you won't walk near it. It's a defense mechanism. With the city of Des Moines right now, we actually have been operating a campground, a piece of city-owned land, surrounded by city-owned land right here in the metro. You didn't know anything about it. Everybody this winter was stably housed out of that campground. It was perfectly clean. In fact, the campers started to complain to the city of Des Moines because they started to see contractors dropping off debris and making their area messy. And they didn't like it. So we gave them garbage bags, the city of Des Moines gave them a dumpster, and that is the cleanest piece of city-owned land you'd ever have. Everybody that was there when they said they were going to clean up the camps, we said, go ahead, they're all housed. That'd be great. You'll give us a great start for the spring. So they did. So I think I want you to hear two sides of this, right? One side of it is one of, this is a human being who's had a trauma in his life, who just doesn't want to be around other people anymore, right? I have a gentleman that I know, we call him Dreamcatcher Bill. He's out in Colorado. Same story. He gave up everything because of losing his wife. He's like, I'm done. On the other side of it, to your point, the substance abuse and the mental health. It's a real issue. I say oftentimes we're no longer running an emergency shelter, we're running a mental health institution. Of the 100 people that we serve every day, we have some really serious concerns that our state has yet to address. And we do not have the supports we need. We have a 98% rate when we go to a judge and ask for a mental health committal, we get it. Right? And we get it because of the severity of what we've been able to document within our building. If you want to know what undiagnosed schizophrenia or sociopath looks like, multiple personality disorder, you can come down every day, right? But the reality is our team treats them, these are human beings, these are somebody's sons and daughters and children, and we have a responsibility to serve them regardless of sometimes how they treat us, right? So we have a real issue with mental health, and we become your institution, our building has. So there is a yin and yang to this story, and it is a problem we can solve. Homelessness is extremely complex, but it's also extremely easy, especially when we look at those corporal works of mercy. You house the homeless. Oh, lots of questions now. All right, go ahead. Anybody?
Can you describe the partnerships and strategies that you utilize to transition folks to the permanent housing, stable housing?
Well, so that's a whole nother layer of complexity, all right? So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can. There is a network of nonprofits that work together simultaneously to solve a lot of these different problems. So we have our own permanent supportive housing on our property. We also rely heavily on other nonprofits or other agencies this is a logistics piece, to figure out where everybody's at. And that's not just here in Polk County and in the city of Des Moines, that's all across central Iowa. We can't do this by ourselves. So that's one aspect of it. There's also two other processes to try and simplify this. One of them is called Centralized Intake. So in the city of Des Moines and in Polk County, if you know someone who's on the verge of homelessness, they're experiencing it, maybe you've seen somebody tent camping or sleeping in their car, and you just want to make sure we know about it, you can call that Centralized Intake number, and they'll make sure that they're in the system and that they're on a waiting list for stable housing. In order to access any funds from Housing and Urban Development or from the VA, you have to go through that Centralized Intake process here in Polk County. There are other nonprofits like ourselves, Dorothy's House, Hope Ministries, Catholic Charities, that they'll house individuals without going through that process. But that's the general piece, that if you want to access those funds from Des Moines Municipal Housing, you got to go through primary health care Centralized Intake. Now that's one county. The other 98 counties use what's called coordinated entry. So it's the exact same system, different geographical areas. And no, they do not talk to one another because that would make sense, okay? So we have access, CISS, we have access to both systems. So we can see everybody that's in the 98 counties, and we can see everybody here in Polk County. When an individual comes to our emergency shelter, we don't sit them across from us and ask us questions. We actually sit them around a dining room table, because it's exactly what you would do if somebody knocked on your door at home and said, I needed help. We make sure their basic needs are taken care of, and then we just simply ask them, where do you want to live? Where do you want to go? Do you want to stay in Polk County? You go through Centralized Intake. If you want to leave Polk County, you go through Coordinated Entry. If you don't care, you'll take first available, you'll do both. Okay? Because if you want to access the federal funding towards housing, you have to go through that process. Otherwise, it really goes back to the person. What do they believe? What do they internally want? I can tell them what they need to go do, but if they don't believe it and if they don't want it, they're not going to go do it, right? So it is extremely complex. I am trying to really simplify it for this group, and I wish it was easier than it is, but it's hard. And I get highly educated people that call me all the time going, hey Melissa, my parents are on a fixed income, they're making $1,400 a month, they're about to be evicted, can you help me? And they usually call in 2 days left before the parents being evicted and they can't find housing. Well, this system's hard. It's hard. And I highly recommend as soon as you have a family member going through some sort of process, reach out immediately. We can work a whole lot quicker the more time we have. Okay, 2 other questions. Go ahead.
Maybe you expand on the aquaculture
Yeah.
and the fish farm concept and the greenhouses. That sustainable solution is just genius. So what's the status? What are your challenges? How can you expand it? Maybe kind of add some color for us and maybe how we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we in 2017 partnered up with ISU Extension and a few other community agencies, and we were able to produce 10,000 pounds of vegetables and fruits in a small little 750 square foot greenhouse in our backyard. And we said, wow, right? So you talk about Lean and Six Sigma and process improvement. We're sitting there going, if we could do 10,000 pounds in 750 square foot, like what's possible? Like how big of a greenhouse could I make, right? So we started to explore what it would take for us to truly be self-sufficient when it came to food insecurity. And we knew that proteins were the hardest things for us to get our hands on. And our clients eat a lot of rubber chicken. And so they're like, we don't want any more rubber chicken. Like, what else could we do from a protein standpoint? And so we actually started to explore this with a friend of CISS, Don Chain. And Don and I started having lots of conversations, and it stemmed from an experience that he had over in Jerusalem where they were able to actually grow bananas and tilapia to help battle food insecurity in the desert. So, well, if they can do it in the desert, and we can do this little bit with no knowledge at all in our little 750, like what's possible if we actually bring these things together? So in 2019, we committed to building this 3,200 square foot greenhouse. We gave our old greenhouse to an elementary school up north, and I believe they're going to be breaking ground this spring to get theirs put in place. And so our idea was very simple. How do we make sure that we can put individuals back to work residing in our emergency shelter? We knew that there was a correlation between food and behavior. 2 excellent books, if you want to read them. One of them was written by a parole officer in Indianapolis called Food and Behavior. The other one you can get through Health and Human Services, and that's called Mood and Food. There's a whole work group statewide, nationally, that's put together on this that has to do with substance abuse. And is focusing on the sugar aspect of alcohol and then the sugars that are in our food every day. So if you come down to the shelter, I don't accept food rescue anymore. If we do, it's on a very limited basis, and it's because my staff twists my arm to accept Girl Scout cookies, or just like, come on, Melissa, everybody wants them, right? Because there's a correlation, right? So if we're asking people to change their behavior, we have to make sure that the food that we're putting on the table can help support that. So the greenhouse, the aquaponics system, the fish essentially become the fertilizer, the nutrients in the water that goes out and provides the nutrients to the lettuce. And then the lettuce is what we were able to harvest on a regular basis that goes back into our kitchen every single day. So 200,000 heads of lettuce, we'll be able to have a meaningful salad just like you had here every day for lunch and dinner.
oftentimes our evening meal groups would sign up and everybody's bringing mac and cheese and everybody's bringing pasta because it's inexpensive. But we recognize that it's a processed food. And this book, Food and Behavior, predicted this back in 1911. As soon as we started to process flour, they started to see an increase in obesity and substance abuse as a culture. And they started to see an increase in mental health issues. And so we just kind of took it right back to those roots and said we have to do a better job of providing a healthy, nutritious meal. And the greenhouse provided the self-sufficiency for us to be able to afford to do it. And so the Shane family kicked it off. We have roughly $330,000 raised on the greenhouse right now. I will say hurdles to overcome. We did finally convince the city of Des Moines that we didn't need a sprinkler system. It's a fish tank. Okay, the fire department's our neighbor. I think we can work something out here. So that saved us some money. But I'll be honest, the expense on the greenhouse was about 4 times higher than we anticipated, and a lot of it had to do with zoning. A lot of it had to do with it. Yeah.
It's Women's History Month, right?
Yeah.
You haven't said a thing about the feminine gender. Do you not have any clients that are women?
I'll address that. Very few. So we do have a men and women's shelter. We only have 15 women in the building right now. We work really, really closely, again, with the Women and Children's, with Hope Ministries. We work with Dorothy's House, with human trafficking. There's another pregnant women's facility up in Ames that if we do have a woman that comes in that's pregnant, we try and work to get them up there as soon as we can. So absolutely, we do serve women within our facility, but many of them have a very, very short stay of 14 days or less. We're able to transition them into stable housing a lot faster than we are the men. Oftentimes they trust a woman more than they trust the man. There's places for women and children, there's no place for men and children. So there's options for women. Another example, Beacon House, Beacon of Life, is another great example that will help support women who are coming out from incarceration. So we do have women's beds, we just have very few in the building. We have 50 total beds, just very few women. Yeah.
Melissa, thank you.
Yeah.
I love your energy and I love what you're doing, and thank you for sharing that today.
Thank you.
Could you comment on the powerful symbolism of the whistle outside of your facility?
All right, which side of the fence do you sit on with the whistle before I comment? All right, so there's a lot of symbolism and art throughout our building. A lot of people don't recognize, and honestly, this is a battle I have every day, that art can be everywhere. Art is great when it comes to therapy and reflection and self-awareness, and the whistle is just one of those examples. So the whistle was put in place back in 2012, and it's called Thunderer. I'm not supposed to call it the whistle. It's Thunderer. It's a replica of the Acme whistle, for just like you're blowing a whistle. Because think about it, right? So it's basketball season, right? If the players hear a whistle, what do? This is interactive. You hear a whistle, what do? There you go, right? So the idea is that becomes an image where sometimes we as an organization just have to blow the whistle. Right? I need y'all to stop. I need you to pause. Right? I think it got pretty stressful in our building in January and February with the extreme cold and the number of things that our city and our political leaders were asking us to do. It got stressful. I think I blew that whistle almost every single day for a minute. And when I say it got stressful is we were this close to actually having the National Guard staff our building. So the whistle is that symbol that when you drive down Mulberry Street, and how we're incorporating the art, I will say now, and how the whistle will be incorporated now within the full agri-hood, is when you come into our parking lot, we've actually created a volunteer hub. The whistle stands in the middle of it, and we are honoring the 8 churches that started as Churches United in 1992. So every church will have a pillar of light that surrounds the whistle. And as our volunteer hub, when we have large groups come in, they'll be able to meet there, and we'll be able to look back at the facility that we're in today. And even I know they're going to be tearing down the old shelter here shortly, the DMARC building, that will be torn down. But that's the shelter we started at, and so it's really powerful for us to sit there and tell that whole story. The art will be continued throughout the entire agri neighborhood. All 5 individuals that perished on the streets of Des Moines in 1992 will have a park bench. They will have a bronze replica made of them on that park bench. is a reflection to we didn't do enough. The lighting throughout the entire system will actually be color coordinated. So similar to how KCCI used to have the weather beacon with different lights, you will have your own weather beacon on homelessness that is incorporated through the arts. The west side wall of our building will be with lights as well. And if you, right now the lights aren't hooked up, they'll be in process here this spring. But I want to remind you, if you ever drive up over that MLK bridge and you have a chance to look at our building and at our agri-hood and you see those lights off, I just want you to remember we didn't do enough. I intend on turning the lights off every single time somebody perishes on the street of Des Moines as a stark reminder that we can do better. What we're called to do in our purpose and in our mission, no different than the whistle. We can make sure that we have a light that reminds you. Because I know that when we get better at CISS, this community gets better, and we won't want to sit in the shadows of these skyscrapers anymore. We know that we can be a beacon of light for this community, and that if you want to grow, if you want to learn, you can come down and do that just from me, from the people living in our emergency shelter. They are wicked smart. That 10,000 pounds of vegetables and fruits that started in the greenhouse, do you know how we did it? I had a veteran who I wouldn't plug in a heater, and so the veteran stole the coffee pot, and he rigged the coffee pot so cold water would go in and hot water would go out, and I had year-round heat in that greenhouse. My clients are wicked smart. Just get out of the way and learn, and they will teach you so much. So I believe we can be that beacon of light. That whistle stands as that symbol. I should say thunderer stands as that symbol. I have to correct myself. But art can truly be anywhere, and our mission's no different.
Thank you, Melissa, for your presentation today, but mostly thank you for your leadership and your service to everyone in our community. We are donating a book in your honor through our Rotary Rosie Reader Van through the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. As I've said almost every week, I think, that last year our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation granted or donated $40,000 to purchase the van through our Community Grant Foundation. Upcoming meetings here at the Embassy Club. Think about somebody who might enjoy one of these programs and invite them to be your guest. Remember that you and your guests need to be registered by 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, please. So on April 7th, we have Ashley Mosen from the Des Moines Public Library introducing our Rotary Rosie Reader Van. On the 14th, Leisha DeSmit, from President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Des Moines. And on the 21st, a favorite for many, the local scholarship awards. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being part of Rotary Club of Des Moines. Thank you again and welcome again to all of our visitors and guests today, Linda, David, Eric, Ted, Todd, and Dan. And that is it. We are adjourned.